They looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sorry, you're not invited. Leave." And when I didn't move fast enough, when I stood there trying to process what I'd just heard, a man in a black blazer put his hand on my chest and said, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the building." That man was hotel security. And I was standing in the lobby of the Fontainebleau Miami Beach, one of the most iconic hotels in the country, wearing a $1,400 suit, holding a card that said "Spouse on the guest list," trying to get into a dinner I had personally helped fund. My name is Spencer Caldwell. I'm 45 years old. I own an event production company here in Miami, Florida, Caldwell Creative Group, and for the past 16 years I have built stages, designed lighting rigs, coordinated vendors, and moved mountains to make other people's events look flawless. I know this industry from the inside out. My wife, Renata, works as a senior vice president at a hospitality consulting firm called Hargrove & Lane. That night, a Thursday in late October, was their company's 15-year anniversary gala. 400 guests, catered by a Michelin-starred team, open bar, live band, the works, and I was standing on the wrong side of a velvet rope while a security guard waited for me to leave. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, every single detail, and I'm going to tell you what I did next, quietly, systematically, without raising my voice once. That resulted in 36 missed calls, a canceled vacation, a ruined birthday party, and a visit to my front door from someone I never expected to see. But before I do, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now. These stories are long for a reason. Every detail matters. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done standing in that lobby? Like the video if you've ever been made to feel invisible by someone who was supposed to have your back. Let's get into it. I need you to understand who Renata and I were before that night, because context is everything. We met 11 years ago at a product launch event I was producing at the Perez Art Museum in Wynwood. She was there representing a client. I was running the show. We bumped into each other near the catering station. Literally bumped. She spilled champagne on my sleeve. And she apologized so genuinely, so specifically, with this kind of sharp humor that caught me off guard, that I laughed for the first time all night. We dated for 2 years, got married at a small ceremony in Coral Gables with 40 people and a caterer I knew personally. We bought a house in Coconut Grove, 3 bedrooms, a pool, the kind of mature oak trees in the backyard that take decades to grow. We built something real. Renata is brilliant. I want to say that clearly and honestly, even now, even after everything. She is one of the sharpest strategic minds I have ever met. She can walk into a room, read every dynamic in it within 5 minutes, and position herself perfectly. That quality made her extraordinary at her job. She went from mid-level consultant to senior VP in 6 years. The people at Hargrove & Lane loved her. She was the person they called when a client relationship was in crisis. She fixed things. She made problems disappear. What I did not fully understand, for a long time, was that some of those problems were me. Let me explain. About 3 years into her time at Hargrove & Lane, the culture shifted. The firm brought in a new managing director, a woman named Adrienne Okafor, who had very specific ideas about how leadership should present. Polished, unified, the right image. Adrienne was from a world where your spouse, your home, your social circle, all of it was part of your professional brand. Renata bought into this completely. The changes were gradual. She started correcting me in front of her colleagues. Small things, the way I pronounced a name, a joke she thought landed wrong, an opinion I offered that she hadn't pre-approved. She started declining to mention my company at work events, because, as she explained once very carefully, event production sounds blue-collar to people who don't understand it. I let it go. I told myself she was under pressure. I told myself she was building something important and I could be patient. What I didn't realize was that patience has a cost, and I had been paying it for years, without ever looking at the bill. The 15-year anniversary gala for Hargrove & Lane had been in planning for 8 months. I knew about it because Renata talked about it constantly. The venue, the guest count, the catering negotiations, the table arrangements. She was on the planning committee. About 4 months before the event, something interesting happened in my professional life. The Fontainebleau Miami Beach, the venue Hargrove & Lane had booked, reached out to me directly. They were restructuring their in-house event production contracts, and they wanted Caldwell Creative Group to come in and assess their AV setup. We ended up signing a 6-month consulting agreement. I was literally in that building on a professional basis multiple times before the night of the gala. I mentioned this to Renata. She didn't say much. A tight smile, a subject change. 2 months before the event, she brought up the gala in a different way. She was standing in our kitchen in Coconut Grove, phone in hand, and she said, very casually, "The gala has a +1 policy for the senior leadership team. I've been going back and forth on whether to bring you." I remember setting down my coffee. "Going back and forth," I repeated. "It's a work event, Spencer. The dynamics are complicated." "Renata, I'm your husband. I know that." She looked at me evenly. "I just want to make sure you understand the environment. It's very polished, very specific. Adrienne will be there. The board will be there. I need to be focused. And I'm a distraction." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." We tabled the conversation. She put me on the guest list. She told me the dress code, black tie, told me the start time was 7 p.m., told me to meet her there because she needed to arrive early for setup obligations. She said it would be good for us to go together, that she was looking forward to it. I believed her. I spent $1,400 on a suit from a tailor on Miracle Mile. I got a haircut. I bought her flowers, calla lilies, her favorite, planning to hand them to her when I arrived. I made a dinner reservation for the two of us at Stubborn Seed the following Saturday to celebrate, because she'd been working so hard and I wanted her to know I was proud of her. I drove to the Fontainebleau on a Thursday evening in late October, valeted my car, walked through the lobby in a suit that fit perfectly, carrying calla lilies, and gave my name at the check-in table. The woman at the table, young, professional, clipboard in hand, looked through the list once, then again. She looked up at me. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't see a Spencer Caldwell on the list." I stayed calm. I assumed it was an administrative error. "Could you check under my wife's name? Renata Caldwell? She's on the leadership team." The woman checked again. "I see Renata Caldwell listed as senior staff. There's no +1 attached to her reservation." "That's not right." She told me. "Can someone reach her?" "She's probably inside." The woman looked uncomfortable. She excused herself, made a quiet phone call, and came back 2 minutes later. "Mr. Caldwell, I've been informed that the guest list is final. I'm sorry." "Informed by whom?" I almost asked. But then a man in a black blazer materialized at my elbow. Hotel security. His name badge said Derek. He was polite, professionally trained, completely impersonal. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back from the check-in area." I looked at Derek. I looked at the woman with the clipboard. I looked at the lobby of the Fontainebleau, the marble floors, the chandelier, the crowd of people in formal wear moving past me toward a party I had been told I was attending. "I work with this hotel," I said very quietly. "I have a consulting contract here." "I understand," Derek said. "But if you're not on the event guest list, I can't let you through." That was when I heard a voice behind me. "Spencer?" I turned around. It was Renata. She had come out of the event. She was wearing a floor-length emerald gown I had never seen before. Her hair was done. Her makeup was perfect. She looked beautiful and absolutely horrified. Not horrified that this was happening to me, horrified that I was still standing there. "Renata," I said, "what is going on?" She stepped toward me, lowering her voice. "I tried to call you this afternoon. You didn't call me. Spencer, this isn't a good time. You told me I was on the list." Her jaw tightened. She glanced over her shoulder, and I followed her gaze. 20 feet away, just inside the entrance to the event space, a woman was watching us. 50s, impeccably dressed, completely expressionless. Adrienne Okafor, the managing director. Watching. Renata turned back to me. Her voice dropped even further. "I'm sorry. The decision was made above me. You can't be here tonight." "Made above you," I repeated. "There were concerns about—" She stopped. Started again. "There were concerns about optics." Optics. I stood there for a moment. I looked at her face. I looked at the flowers in my hand, the calla lilies I had bought for her, and I felt something very specific happen inside me. Not an explosion. Not a breakdown. Something quieter than that, and permanent. I set the flowers on the check-in table. "Okay," I said. I turned around and walked out. I valeted my car out. I drove home to Coconut Grove. I sat in my driveway for about 15 minutes. I want to be honest about what I felt in those 15 minutes, because I think it matters. It wasn't rage. It was grief, but a very clear-eyed grief, the kind that arrives when something you had already half suspected finally becomes confirmed. When the thing you'd been telling yourself wasn't true, turns out to be exactly as true as you feared. Renata was ashamed of me, not occasionally, not in private moments of frustration, fundamentally, structurally, as a policy. She had removed me from a guest list I was entitled to be on because having her husband present, in a room full of the people whose opinion she cared most about, was a liability. Not a risk, a liability. That word was running through my head as I sat in the driveway. Liability. I went inside. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon. I sat at my home office desk, the one in the room I'd converted from the guest bedroom because I worked from home 3 days a week, and I opened my laptop. I was not going to scream. I was not going to call her and give her the satisfaction of hearing me fall apart. I was not going to involve her family or mine, not yet. I was going to do what I knew how to do. I was going to assess the situation, identify the leverage points, and make decisions. This is what owning a business teaches you, by the way. Emotion is information, not instruction. You feel it, you note it, and then you get to work. I opened our shared financial accounts. Renata and I had a joint account we used for household expenses and shared commitments, vacations, home repairs, shared subscriptions. I also had my business accounts, obviously, which were entirely separate. But the joint account held significant shared commitments, and I had total access to it. I pulled up a list of every automatic payment, recurring charge, and scheduled expenditure attached to that account. I started reading, and I started making decisions. Here is what I found, and what I did. First, Renata's birthday party. She was turning 42 in 6 weeks. At her request, her enthusiastic, specific, detailed request, I had booked a private dining room at Ariete in Coconut Grove. 14 guests. Set menu, open wine tab. The deposit was paid. The full bill, payable on the day of the event, was going to run approximately $4,800. I called Ariete the next morning and canceled the reservation. I was polite. I explained there had been a change in plans. They returned my deposit within a week. Second, a trip to the Amalfi Coast. Renata and I had been planning this trip for almost 2 years. Flights, hotels, a private boat excursion out of Positano, the whole thing. I had booked it. I had coordinated all of it, because she had said, and I remember this word for word, "You're so much better at this than I am. You make everything perfect." The total cost of the trip was just under $22,000. I had paid it entirely out of our joint account. I contacted the travel agency we used, a firm in Brickell I had worked with for years, and I initiated the cancellation process. Because I had booked through them on a flexible rate and purchased travel insurance, I recovered approximately $17,400. The rest was non-refundable. That stung, but it was a cost I was prepared to absorb. Third, a home renovation project we had contracted. We were redoing the primary bathroom, new tile, new fixtures, custom cabinetry. The contractor, a guy named Troy, I'd used twice before, was scheduled to start in 3 weeks. The contract value was $31,000. We had paid a deposit of $9,000. I called Troy, explained that we were pausing the project indefinitely, and asked him to hold the deposit as credit against future work. Troy, who I had a good relationship with and who knew I'd send more business his way, agreed. Fourth, a series of smaller things. A subscription to a high-end meal delivery service Renata used. $380 a month. Tickets to a charity gala she'd mentioned wanting to attend in December. $1,200 for 2. A hotel reservation in the Keys for New Year's Eve. $2,600. A personal training package she'd started and charged to the joint account. $3,400. Canceled, 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 canceled. Total value of commitments I either canceled, paused, or redirected. Approximately $62,000. I want to be clear about something. I did not do this in anger. I did not do this to be vindictive in a childish way. I did it because I needed to understand, clearly, in numbers, exactly how much of what we called our shared life I was actually financing. And having done that math, I needed to make those resources reflect reality, rather than an arrangement I had just discovered was fundamentally broken. I also contacted my attorney. Not to file anything. Not yet. Just to have a consultation. To understand where I stood. Then I turned off my phone, made dinner, watched an old film I'd been meaning to see for months, and went to sleep. My phone stayed off overnight. I turned it back on at 6:30 in the morning while I was making coffee. 36 missed calls, 14 text messages, 3 voicemails. Renata had called 8 times between 11 p.m. and midnight, apparently when she got home from the gala and found I wasn't there. Then 6 more times between 7 and 8 in the morning, when the cancellation notifications presumably started reaching her. The travel agency would have sent an email confirmation, the restaurant too. The texts ranged from, "Spencer, where are you? I'm worried," to, "What did you do?" to, "Call me right now." This is insane. I read them all. I did not respond to any of them. There were also 3 calls from a number I didn't recognize. A 305 area code, Miami, but not a contact in my phone. I ignored those too. I went to the gym. I had a training session at a facility in South Miami I'd been going to for 4 years. I told my trainer I'd had a rough week and needed to work hard. We worked hard. I drove home, I showered. I answered 2 work emails that needed responses. At 11:45 a.m., my doorbell rang. I looked at the security camera feed on my phone. On my front porch in Coconut Grove, standing in the kind of late October Miami morning that is warm and golden and somehow inappropriate for everything that was happening, was a woman I did not expect. It was not Renata. It was Claudia Brennan, the events director at Hargrove and Lane, the woman who had been on the planning committee with Renata, the woman who, as I would later understand, had been the one who made the call about the guest list. I opened the door. Claudia Brennan was in her mid-40s, trim, professional, the kind of put-together that suggested she had a schedule and she stuck to it. She was not wearing work clothes. She had clearly come here on her own time, in jeans and a blazer, which told me something. She said, "Mr. Caldwell? I'm Claudia Brennan. I work with Renata." "I know who you are," I said. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "May I come in?" I thought about it for a moment, then I stepped back and let her in. We sat in the living room. I did not offer coffee. I waited. Claudia said, "I want to be honest with you, because I think you deserve that. What happened last night was my decision, not Adrian's, not Renata's." I looked at her. "Explain that." She took a breath. "Adrian made a comment 2 weeks ago about how the event should feel. Very curated, very leadership-focused. And I interpreted that as a directive to keep it tight. Renata had already submitted your name as her +1. I removed it. I didn't tell her. I thought I was doing the right thing for the event." The silence in the room was significant. "You removed my name without telling my wife." "Yes. And when Renata came to the lobby and told me I wasn't on the list, she didn't know why either." Claudia closed her eyes briefly. "I don't know exactly what she knew. I've been trying to reach her this morning too. What I do know is that the security interaction, asking you to leave, the way it was handled, that was completely unacceptable. You are her husband. You were a guest. And you've worked with the Fontainebleau professionally. I'm embarrassed by how that went." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then I looked at her. "Claudia, I appreciate you coming here. I genuinely do. It takes something to show up at someone's door and say what you just said." "But," she said, "but I need you to understand something. Whether it was your call or Adrian's or Renata's, the outcome is the same. I stood in the lobby of a hotel where I have a professional contract and I was told to leave by security. That's the outcome. The origin story doesn't change the outcome." She nodded. "And the issue I'm dealing with," I continued, "isn't just about one night. You can see that, right? One night is a symptom. What happened last night was the clearest possible expression of a dynamic I've been watching build for 3 years. Claudia didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I said. "I'm in the middle of figuring that out." She stood up. She reached into her bag and handed me a card. "I'm going to address this with Adrian and with our HR team. Regardless of everything else, your professional standing, your contract with the venue, you were treated poorly, and that needs to be acknowledged formally. I took the card. I walked her to the door. After she left, I stood in my living room for a long time. Renata arrived at the house at 1 p.m. She had a key. She walked in. She found me in the kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept. The evening makeup was gone. She was in clothes she'd clearly pulled on in a hurry. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Something that was trying to be anger but kept collapsing into something much less controlled than anger. "You canceled the Amalfi trip," she said. "I did." "You canceled my birthday dinner." "I did." "Spencer." Her voice cracked on my name. "Why?" I set down the glass I was holding. I turned to face her fully. "Because I sat in our driveway last night for 15 minutes, I said, "and I tried to think of a single major commitment in our shared life that you had initiated, planned, and paid for. And I couldn't think of one. And then I started thinking about how long I've been watching you edit me out of your life in little ways, and I tried to remember the last time you defended me to someone, the last time you said something about what I do that wasn't a quiet apology for my existence. And I realized I had been funding a life that I was not fully welcome in. And I thought, if that's the arrangement, then I should stop funding the parts that benefit you and see what's left." The kitchen was very quiet. "That's not fair," she said. "The Fontainebleau lobby was not fair," I said. "I didn't know Claudia had taken you off the list." "Renata," I stopped her. "You've been taking me off lists for 3 years. Claudia just did it literally." She flinched. "I'm not going to pretend," I said, "that a single apology from Claudia or a single conversation with HR is going to fix what is actually wrong here. What is actually wrong here is that somewhere in the last 3 years you made a decision about who I am and what I'm worth. And you started making choices based on that decision without telling me. And I let you because I loved you and I trusted you and I wanted to believe that what I was seeing wasn't what I was seeing." "I love you," she said. "I know you do," I said, "in your way. But love that's conditional on other people not seeing it isn't the kind I can live on." She sat down at the kitchen table. She put her face in her hands. We sat there for a long time. "I'm not going to tell you this story had a clean ending, because it didn't. Life doesn't. What I will tell you is what happened over the following 2 months. Because it matters." Claudia Brennan followed through. She filed a formal incident report with Hargrove and Lane's HR department documenting what had happened at the gala. Adrienne Okafor, when called in to respond, apparently was furious. Not at Claudia, but at the fact that it had become a documented incident. In trying to build an image of seamless, curated professionalism, they had created a liability far larger than any awkward spouse at a party. I received a formal written apology from the firm. The Fontainebleau, separately, reached out through their events team. The security manager personally called me. They were concerned about the incident given my consulting relationship with the property. They offered, and I accepted, an upgraded contract renewal. The security manager, for the record, was mortified. Derek, the guard who had escorted me, was also mortified when he found out who I was. I held no grudge against Derek. He was doing his job with the information he had. Renata and I began couples therapy 3 weeks after the gala. I want to be honest that I was not optimistic going in. I went because I believed I owed both of us the attempt to understand what had happened before making any permanent decisions. What came out in those sessions was more complicated than I expected. Renata's internalization of Adrienne's expectations had gone deeper than I had understood. She had not consciously decided to be ashamed of me. She had been slowly, methodically conditioned to see me as a professional liability, and had begun making decisions from that place without fully examining them. That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. We are still in therapy. I don't know where we will land. I am not going to tell you we fixed everything in 60 days, because that would be a lie and you deserve better than a lie. The birthday dinner did not happen at Ariette. We spent her birthday quietly, at home, eating food I cooked. She said it was the best birthday she'd had in years. I believed her. The Amalfi Coast trip is still on the table, rescheduled, not canceled, for next spring. I rebooked it under terms I felt reflected the relationship I need it to be. An equal partnership, not a favor I was extending. The bathroom renovation resumed. Troy started work 2 weeks ago. Renata chose the tile herself. She came home and showed me the samples with a kind of careful, deliberate enthusiasm that I recognized as her trying to include me in something rather than manage me around it. It was a small thing. I noted it. I am 45 years old. I have spent my professional life making other people's events look effortless. I understand logistics. I understand contingency planning. I understand what it costs to build something that looks beautiful and seamless from the outside. What I have been slower to understand is that some of those skills made me too easy to take for granted. I plan. I accommodate. I solve problems before they become visible. I have been doing that in my marriage the same way I do it at work, and I had not fully noticed that Renata had started treating the outcome as natural rather than cultivated, as something she deserved rather than something I was choosing to build. Standing in that lobby in a $1,400 suit, holding flowers, being escorted out by security, that was my contingency plan finally arriving. The emergency that I had been quietly planning around for years, finally refusing to be invisible. I am glad I did not yell. I am glad I walked out quietly. I am glad I went home, sat down, and thought. Because what I did next, calmly, methodically, without drama, was the first time in 3 years that I made decisions that were based entirely on what I needed rather than on what would keep the peace. 36 missed calls told me something important. I was not as invisible as I had been trained to believe. The question now is whether the person on the other end of those calls is capable of seeing me clearly, not when it costs her nothing, but when it costs her something. I'll let you know.